Hello and good day. G3 presents Lean Program Rollout, championed by Jennifer Roberts, Alyssa Trad, Sean Schmidt, and Antonio Perez. The scope of our project is that we are a consultant firm that has recently been recruited by Company A to implement a Lean Six Sigma program with tools and methodologies and a current organizational culture operating without one. The goal is to increase the value within the organization's offerings and fostering positive relationships between the management, employee, staff, and thus creating added value to companies A's products and for their investors. Included here is a snapshot of our overall project plan that G3 used to stay focused and organized. So without further ado, what exactly is Lean? Lean focuses on value through the relentless elimination of waste and acceleration in the velocity of processes. It's a systematic approach to adding value to work through implementing standard processes and maximizing efficiency. The overall goal is to maximize organizational and the individuals there within human potential. So now that we've clarified what lean is, how did lean manufacturing as we know it begin? Over here to the left, we have an evolution of lean, including predecessor contributions dating as far back as 1850 with the perfection of interchangeable parts from Eli Whitney and the cotton gin. Contributions continue with Frederick Taylor and standardization of work and time study. And then we also have Gilbreth with motion study and process charts. And one of the most notable contributors is Henry Ford with the assembly line for the Model T. What I found interesting was the inspiration for Toyota came from Ford when they switched gears during World War II to manufacture parts for the B-24 bomber that secured an Allied victory. And this happened at the Willow Run plant, and the event was quoted as bomber an hour. And so this, as well as total quality management, inspired the head people at Toyota to focus on inventory control. And this pretty much grew into what we know as just-in-time concept, which would be for replenishment and processing and manufacturing. And that continued to evolve to world-class manufacturing, and it started to incorporate the human element of the workforce and capitalizing on their knowledge to help streamline processes, pretty much accumulating to what we know today as lean manufacturing. So many organizations and individuals have heard of lean to some degree. And I want to take a moment to discuss the top reasons why cultures and organizations have not implemented a program. Number one, negative past experiences. We've tried this and it doesn't work for us. Number two, perceptions of their human resources ability. The belief that the programs have like involve great degrees of mathematics, and that their employees aren't, engineers or scientists that can calculate computations. They're just workers. So that's contributing to the perception of the human resource ability. Number three, preconceived notions about effectiveness within their industry. Basically citing here that, well, we're not manufacturing, we're food service, or pretty much any organization that wouldn't be manufacturing. They just believe that it wouldn't work for them. Industry size would be a number four, and that would be, those a lean program only works at a big company. We're too small of a business, and therefore we couldn't benefit from methodologies. Number 5, it's too expensive and too time-consuming to implement a program. The next one is believing it is a passing trend, just like total quality management, some other concepts out there. They believe that that lean is just a fad, and they don't really want to pursue it. So the next one would be little knowledge of lean, which could be a viable response of why cultures don't do it, and that's probably tied with the last one. Fear of failure. We don't have the knowledge, and therefore we will fail. So to me, an additional reason that I would see opposition to implementing a lean program would be failure to get acquainted with some of the terms, tools, and methods. The additional vocabulary can really be a challenge for some cultures. And once we kind of understand what some of those concepts are, they're not so intimidating. And that there are over 500 different terms, tools, and methods that are often included in Six Sigma programs. So we're going to cover the top handful of them briefly, and then we'll go into some a little bit more in depth. So the first one is Kaizen, which means a change for the good. Genbetsu, which is a really component of 3 words, and one of them is notably included is Gemba, which is going to and seeing. It's a process of overviewing. Next, we have Kanban, which is a form of communication written. Typically, these will be in a board form. Can be an area where people can go and kind of make communications. And then Muri, Mura, and Mudra, which are terms for waste. And I'm going to jump ahead and include the 7 waste terms. And the acronym TIMWOOD, which stands for Transportation, Inventory, Motion, Waiting, Over Processing, Over Producing, and Defects. That's definitely married into the Mura, Muri, and Mudra, as any lean program would focus on eliminating wastes. And then jumping back, we have 5S, as well as shadow boards. And these are different organizational components which help streamline work processes in production. And speaking of which, standardized work, and we have already met with the management staff and have overviewed their job instructions and their SOPs, standard operating procedures, to make sure that those are uniform as they are training individuals and for ongoing training purposes. The process of standardizing work is a very important component in any lean program. And then lastly, value stream mapping. So at this time, I will turn it over to our subject champions to discuss the different things that we will be implementing first in our lean program rollout.
What is Kaizen? Kaizen is a Japanese word for continual improvement. In business, Kaizen refers to activities that continuously improve all functions and involve all employees from the CEO to the assembly line workers. It also applies to processes such as purchasing and logistics that cross organizational boundaries into the supply chain. Kaizen has also been applied to healthcare, life coaching, government, banking, and many other industries. By improving standardized programs and processes, Kaizen aims to eliminate waste. Kaizen was first adapted in Japanese business after World War II. Kaizen was influenced by American business and quality manager management teachers, and also, and most notably, as part of the Toyota Way. It has since spread worldwide and has been applied to environments outside of business and productivity. Kaizen's 7 cycles. The continuous cycle of Kaizen activities includes identify an opportunity, analyze the process, develop an optimal solution, implement the solution, study the results, standardize the solution, plan for the future. Kaizen's business basic tips. Kaizen generates small improvements as a result of coordinated continuous efforts by all employees. Therefore, replace old ideas with new ideas. Question current practices and standards. Seek advice on prior activities. Think how to do something. Kaizen's basic tips continued. Kaizen's events bring together a group of process owners and managers to map out an existing process and identify improvements that are within the scope of participants. Don't make excuses. Make it happen. Kaizen's tip is don't seek perfection. Solution is more prudent or wise. Another tip is correct mistakes immediately. Kaizen's activities. Kaizen activities covers improvement in a number of areas, including quality, which offers better products, service, work environment, practice, and processes. Or if you think of cost, reducing expenses and manpower, and use the material, energy, and resources. How about delivery? What do you think of? Cutting delivery time, movement, and non-value added activities. Management. Improving procedures, training, morale, administration, planning, flow, information systems, documentation, and reporting. Last but not least, safety. Decreasing hazardous situations, unsafe working conditions, changes of resource depletion and damage to the environment.
When looking at implementing Kaizen, the Kaizen philosophy, we really need to focus on 3 different states or phases. The now, which is the present condition that we are working with. Next, which is our desired state or outcome that we want. And new is how we will reach that desired state or outcome.
Gemba walks. So a Gemba walk is a tool also has origins from Japan and the Toyota company. The idea behind the Gemba walk is its meaning is real thing. So it's the process of leadership observing a person on the floor or doing their work and getting a feel for what the work is that's being done in the workplace. There are positives to Gemba walks, but also some risks that leadership needs to be aware of. So on the positives, the first-hand observation that this Gemba walk does is it allows leadership to really have an understanding, or at least a little bit of an understanding of what the work looks like and the workflow. So this is something that leadership doesn't always get, because typically they're removed from the floor and don't understand the full process of what their employees are working on. It also allows for an interaction between top leadership and then employees on the floor. This is really important, I think, for employees to feel supported and like they matter and they aren't just another number. It's important for them to interact with leadership and really feel like leadership's listening to them and hears them. Now, on the other hand, there are a few risks that go with this. One being that employees may feel like they are being watched or judged. So this is where communication becomes critical. The biggest thing with Gemba walks is you do not want your employees to feel like they are being watched or judged. If they feel like that, they will shut down. It will not be a successful Gemba walk, and they will immediately become feeling like they are doing something wrong, which is the absolute opposite of what this is supposed to do. Also, if communication isn't done properly, like I said, employees will shut down and then resist any change. So as leadership, you're walking through the Gemba walk, or you're completing the Gemba walk, you're looking for ways to improve, you're talking with the employees, and in your mind, you have an idea of what you're looking at and what you're thinking needs to be changed. What's important is that's communicated to the employees, because if it is not communicated to the employees, they will resist change, and it will make it so much harder for leadership to take what could be a good thing, and it could become a very negative thing and create a very negative culture. When communicating about the Gemba walk and also looking for success, the first thing is you should announce the Gemba walk. Leadership should never just pop up on the floor and expect that employees are going to agree with everything that's being done and that they are going to be open and welcoming. They're immediately going to shut down and worry that they're doing something wrong. So announce when it's going to happen. Explain why you're there, what your intentions are. Be very open with your employees. And also ask a lot of questions and do a lot of listening. So this is not a time for you to do the talking, to tell them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. The biggest thing with the Gemba walk is you want to listen and you want to observe. So ask the questions when you feel like they need to be asked. Don't ask them in a judgmental way. Ask very factual questions. Ask how they feel about the job or what they feel could be improved. And then finally, engage with your workers. So the managers or the supervisors of the floor may be with you on the Gemba walk. The idea behind this is not for you to engage with managers and supervisors. That's meant for your leadership meeting. This Gemba walk time is meant for you to engage with the workers themselves. You want to talk to them and make them feel like they are important. The 5S methodology has origins that were started in Japan as their Japanese company Toyota production system. This concept is one that looks to create an organized, clean, and functional workspace. As you can see, there are 5 different phases: sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. The most important part of this methodology is you cannot skip ahead to a new phase until 1, 2, or whichever one you're on has been completed. Let's talk about the phases in detail. Phase 1 is sort. This means that you're going to walk through your workspace and you're going to identify and remove any of the unnecessary items from it. Lots of times in our workspace it is very disorganized, or you will have a lot of things that no longer are used. This is the time where we're going to work through those. You're going to make different piles. So you will have a pile of necessary items, ones that you use daily or weekly. Then you'll make another pile of items that maybe you only use once a month or once a year. And finally, a pile of ones that you absolutely do not need. You need to ask yourself this question: is this item needed? If so, how many? Many times we look at items and we get worried about running out, so we order a bunch of them. And the reality is it's not needed. And finally, how frequently is this used? Then you will put the items that are frequently used in close proximity and store the ones that maybe you don't use for at least a month or maybe once a year into a different storage area so they're out of the space. After this, you move on to phase 2. Phase 2 focuses on items that are left and necessary, and it's going to find ways to store them that are efficient and effective and allows for easy access. You'll take time to look at the process flow for the workplace and to decide where it makes the most sense to store items. The idea of this phase is that everything has a storage place, a place that it belongs, and that it is efficient and that it works with the workplace it is in, and it doesn't inhibit the employee's ability to work effectively. The biggest thing with this is to label the items and make it clear where the items belong so everybody has the identity and knows where to put them. Phase 3 is the sweep phase. This phase is literally cleaning the workplace. It's cleaning, it's dusting, it's vacuuming, and then it's taking those tasks and assigning them to employees within the workplace. You will have tasks that are assigned daily, things that need to be done daily to keep the workplace clean. You will have things that are assigned weekly or monthly. The biggest thing with this one is to communicate through a log. So have something posted close so employees can see what needs to be done and when their time is. It also helps keep all employees accountable. So they will have to mark off when they have done their daily tasks. The best part about this is that if it's not marked off, other employees see it and may say something. Phase 4 is standardizing. So this is where you will create and implement controls and guidelines on how to keep the workplace organized and clean. You need to take documents that show the standards and expectations of the workplace and display it in a public area. And also make sure that it has a high level of urgency and understanding for why the workplace needs to stay clean, organized, effective, efficient. If the leadership team does not show how this is a level of urgency and how this makes employees' lives better, then it will not follow through and it will not stay the way that you have created it. And finally, phase 5, sustain. During this last and final phase, leadership needs to create the proper training for each employee that begins so that they easily understand the culture and they understand the process of what is being done in the workplace. The idea is that this new standardized method should not be work. At some point it should just become second nature, that this is what employees do and this is how the workplace looks. Reviews should be done by leadership to ensure that the 5S methodology is continuing to be followed, and then also follow up on concerns that are seen and talk to employees to find out what's working, what's not working, what could be done better. And finally, and probably the most important, it needs to be celebrated when this implementation has taken place and completed. By celebrating it, it makes it more than work. It makes it seem as though everybody has worked together as a team and made the whole environment in the workplace a better place to work. Communication and success of the 5S method. First of all, when it comes to success, the biggest and most important thing is you cannot move on from one phase until the phase is completely full. So that means that if you have not sorted through your entire workplace, you cannot move on to phase 2 because it won't be successful. Set yourself up for success when implementing this method so that it's not seen as something that doesn't last a long time or just another idea that leadership has and doesn't really follow through with. Make sure that you set yourself up for success and you set your employees up for success. You also need to make sure that the communication for this comes from the leadership down. So as long as leadership is on board and leadership is showing that they appreciate and they want this type of method used, and then also give a full explanation of why it's being implemented and what the outcomes are, it will help employees understand what is going on. And finally, you need to continue to follow through as needed to create a culture of a supportive teamwork. So the whole idea between 5S method is it's a teamwork process. And so it can't be up to just one person to take control and make sure that it's a success. It really has to be a culture, and it has to be something that everybody is on the same page with.
Another great tool of Lean Six Sigma program are shatter boards. What are shatter boards? Great question. let me tell you all about how shadow boards can help improve your organization. Shadow boards are outlined or custom fitted storage boards, or outlined areas to store tools, supplies, and or other equipment. Shadow boards can be utilized in many various environments, including production industry, such as farms, the office environment, or sales industry. In the office, these boards are great for organizing storage of office supplies. Sales industries use shadow boards to organize items that they sell or present to potential customers. Shadow boards can be used in the manufacturing industry, such as factories or loading docks. These industries use shadow boards to store supplies or tools. These boards can also be used in the healthcare industry, including the surgical wards or central equipment rooms on an inpatient unit. They can also be used in a critical care area, such as emergency room, where it is imperative that high visibility and response time are as efficient as possible. Another industry that shadow boards have proven to increase efficiency and productivity are the service automotive industry. Mechanics will know what and where tools should be, and if something goes missing, management is able to replace it before it causes delay and needed and not available. On this slide, here's a great example of shadow board in a factory. As you can see, it is clear tool number 130 is in use or it's missing. The open-end wrenches are in the top left, and everyone that ever would need them knows that they should or will be there. Same goes for all the other tools on this board. Here's another great example, except this one is used in a loading dock. The dock tools would be stored on this board. And as you can see, even though the board is empty, we know from looking at the board that there should be 2 tape guns, 2 clipboards, a razor knife on the bottom right, along with some other items. Even though we have never seen this board before, we know which items belong where. Now take a second and imagine how this can add organization and structure to your workplace. Shadow boards are great, but with most good things, there are drawbacks. So let's take a minute and discuss the pros and cons. Shadow boards have multiple advantages. They offer high visibility, meaning everyone that needs to use these items know exactly where it will be, and if it is not there, they either know it is in use or know it needs to be replaced. These boards are a great way to maintain structure and organization. There's a saying that states, "Too many cooks in the kitchen could spoil the broth." The same concept goes with organizing equipment. One person may have one idea of how things should be organized, and one may have another. With these boards, management can set the structure and organization of equipment and maintain that structure moving forward. Shadow boards reduce the effort needed to maintain organized equipment storage. The shadow outlines make it so effortless that the end users do not have to think twice about where the tool is or where the equipment belongs. With that minimal effort, efficiency is increased and there is time saved. Time saved equates to less money spent on workers looking or tracking down items. Shadow boards also help management keep tabs on lost equipment. If an item is gone from the board, it is easily identified, and management can replace the item, reducing downtime to missing equipment. These boards also reduce repeat equipment purchases, as everything is organized and highly visible. There are a few drawbacks that may come with shadow boards, however, the risk is very low. Shadow boards, if not placed in the optimal locations, could cause added time that associates need to travel to find equipment. Another potential drawback could be if you constantly are changing equipment types, you may find yourself needing to update or change out your shadow boards often. Finally, the last drawback of shadow boards is the initial investment of time and money and resources to kickstart this program. Shadow boards are one of the lean processes that the pros outweigh the cons, and we recommend to add efficiency to your organization.
So when implementing a Six Sigma lean organization, there are some risks that come along with this. So here's a table that the team had put together, and it shows the risks that come along with, well, first of all, it talks about how we're implementing the Six Sigma lean organization, and then level 2, you'll find all of the different areas that we are engaging or asking our leadership to take a look at. So the 5S method, the Gemba walk, Kaizen, and shadow board. Under level 3, you'll find the risks that come with each one. So let's talk about the 5S method. Here, long-term engagement is a big risk. If the 5S method is not held accountable and there aren't check-ins done, long-term engagement can be negated. It won't happen. It's also easily delegated, and leadership engagement can fade. Again, leadership needs to show how important this is for the leadership. And again, so when I'm going through these, you can see the risk, and then on the other side, you'll see the mitigation, just so you can follow along. The lack of follow-through and continuance is also a big thing. One way to mitigate this is for each department, have a point person or a lead who can update the weekly cleaning schedule, do monthly report outs to leadership, kind of keep everybody in the line or on the same page. So it's important that they are not seen as a manager, that they are a colleague to the employees. When it comes to Gemba walks, the risk is employees feeling judged or attacked. This is where communication is huge, and that leadership really needs to encourage conversations between leadership and employees on the floor. There can also be a lack of engagement from employees, also from them feeling judged or attacked, or feeling like leadership really doesn't care, they're just doing it because they have to. This is where leadership really needs to engage with the employees. So talk with them, ask them questions, show that you really do care about their work. Now Kaizen, again, like many of these, there's a lack of follow through with leadership. So when implementing things like a suggestion box or asking for emails on suggestions, leadership needs to respond, and we recommend that they respond within 2 days of receiving the message, especially from emails. Suggestion box maybe only check once a week, but the biggest thing is follow through. Answer the questions, make the employees feel like you heard them and that you're working on it. And even if you don't have an answer, let them know that you are working on it and that it's something that you're hoping to find an answer on. And also training on the proper approach to suggestions for the leadership. So we recommend bringing in an outside expert to talk with leadership so that they can be properly coached and trained on the best way to approach suggestions. We understand that sometimes suggestions become available that just are not realistic, and so it's good for leadership to understand how to answer those or how to respond to those where the employees don't feel like they didn't matter. Also, the Kaizen is seen as a short-term solution. So this really needs to, like all others, needs to be something that's seen as long-term culture change. So you need to make sure that Kaizen becomes a way of life to be successful. This is something that leadership needs to communicate, they need to show, they need to follow through with, and it should be a topic at a monthly or quarterly meeting to allow for employees to address areas of improvement, for leadership to meet and say, this is what people suggested. Is it something that we can change? And if so, how? And if not, how do we bring that back to the employees? And finally, the shadow board. So a big thing with the shadow board is that the equipment is updated and the shadow board is not. So you can't have a shadow board that's out of date. It won't work. So from here, we also suggest that you have a lead from the employee. 1 or 2 leads if you have multiple shifts, where if something has been updated, so new equipment has been found, then that lead employee will take it and update the boards as the equipment's updated. The most important thing is that it stays up to date. So if new equipment has come in, it's also important for management or supervisors to let that lead employee know so they know to update the board. And finally, a tool may be used in more than one place, and so the shadow board is not always easy access to each area that needs the tool. So if you have a tool that's used 2 feet from the shadow board, and then that same tool has to be used all the way down the hall, this can become an issue. It's not going to make an effective or efficient workplace anymore like a shadow board is supposed to. And so during the Gemba walk that the leadership does, this is where leadership can really observe and see how often tools are really needed and used and where the lack of efficiency is, while also asking employees about this. So you can really use this with the Gemba walk. It's a great tool. And then also after the observation and study has been done, decide, does it make sense to move the shadow board? Are many of the tools used in multiple places and the place that the shadow board originally went just no longer makes sense? Or is it something that we just buy more tools? So I understand that we have to think of cost and efficiencies for the budget. However, if it is a tool that's used on a regular basis, does it make more sense for us to buy an additional tool and then put it in a different shadow board? So all great things to look at. So this is kind of our risk management plan for how to use each one of the methods for the Six Sigma Lean, and how we recommend mitigating any of the risks that become or arise during the implementation.
Well, implementing a plan for Company A, we must identify the key stakeholders. That would include Company A's executive team and sequential management structure, including mid-level managers and frontline supervisors, Company A's employees, Company A's end consumers, Company A's investors, and the reputation of G3 Consultants firm. When implementing a plan, we have a 6-step process here. We're going to first meet with the executive staff to develop a program in person to meet the organizational needs and objectives. Step 2 would be to conduct leadership team meetings with mid-level managers via webinar and virtual go-to meetings. We want to make sure that the program can be revised to fit the culture best and we get the best management buy-in. Step 3 would be to conduct a revised meeting with the leadership team of front-end supervisors, also going the virtual meeting webinar route to provide education, understanding, and implementation for the rollout within the culture. Step 4, supply hard copies, documentations, posters, placards needed for the organizational rollout. Step 5 would be preparing the final presentation for Company A's in-house rollout to employees. And step 6 will be following up support via email, virtual meetings, and scheduling periodic meetings on site to ensure a smooth cultural transition. So now we've talked about why organizations do not incorporate a lean program into their culture. We should note that 2 out of 3 lean programs do fail to achieve their initial objectives. And that is because they fail to incorporate the critical success factors, the 5 here below, that will help them achieve results. The first one is commitment to the program. Ongoing communication, listening to suggestions and questions from employees, and explaining why lean means change for the better. Essentially here it's imperative that management buys in to the lean program and what it'll do for the organization. Number 2 would be training the workforce. Educating and training, including the management first, is critical. And this can be done through multiple ways. Number 3 would be documenting plans and following up, and that includes using the lean tools and methodologies that we will discuss further on. Number 4, allocating resources. Considerations must be given when budgeting and educating and allowing for tools and methods to be used that will result in successes. And then the last one would be sharing the gains, and that would be the importance of fostering the relationship between management and employees. And this is what really adds the value to the work, is through that relationship and garnering the knowledge that the staff members do have about the tasks themselves that result in the final product. So failure to get any of these 5 things correct attribute to the 2/3 in success rate.